Hello and welcome to another episode of Acting Prime Minister with me, Paul Brands, the podcast where we pick the PM and ask a different guest each week to imagine themselves behind that Downing Street door. And this week's guest could certainly pack a political punch. British and intercontinental cruiserweight champion, he honed his skills in the boxing ring to escape the fight on the streets. Stabbed in the chest, aged just 15, he still bears his scars, but uses his experience to teach others about the dangers of knife crime. Richard Riakporhe, welcome to Acting Prime Minister.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks for having us here in your gym that you train in Battersea.
Thank you.
This is where you train day to day, but at the moment you've got an injury, haven't you? I mean, how is your hand? I should ask you first.
So my hand is getting better. So what happened was in my last fight for the British title, I dislocated some metacarpals and suffered a fracture. So I had to go under surgery to put everything back in place, relocate the bones.
Is that injury kind of regular in boxing? Would you kind of, every now and then get injured and have a couple of months out? Is that something that boxers have to go through quite a bit?
Yeah, it is quite regular. In my situation, I grew up not learning how to wrap my hands properly, and I suffered the consequences for that later on. Hitting bags, not wrapping my hands properly, using worn out gloves, and I learned from that. So now I make sure I'll make it, my priority to wrap my hands properly.
Yeah.
I have my coach doing it for me now, and I actually speak about that to a lot of youth coming up. Take care of your hands, especially if you want to do this on the long term.
And we are actually sitting in the boxing ring at the moment, just to explain to people why there's a bit of noise going on around us, because we're right in the centre of the gym here, and this is where you train day to day.
Yeah.
And this is where, from here you've become British champion.
Yeah.
And you've defended Intercontinental champion twice.
Twice, yes.
So obviously having a very successful career in boxing, but that wasn't always what you set out to do in life, was it?
I always wanted to be a footballer. Growing up, wanted to play for Crystal Palace. And then I kind of got involved in the streets, getting up to no good, being around the wrong people, and found myself drifting away on the path to destruction. So it took me a while to get on the right path and start focusing on what is right and doing right.
And we'll talk about that a bit more in a bit, but let's make you Prime Minister for half an hour first. So let's send you through Downing Street door and just get you settled in for a bit to start with in that Downing Street study. So firstly, what's the picture that you think you'd hang on the wall to inspire you?
I had a hard think about this actually, and I thought what would be perfect is having a picture of Muhammad Ali.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, Muhammad Ali, and not just because of the boxing element, but because of what he stood for, what he represented. And he stood for what was right, and he wasn't afraid to speak about it. And he served the people. Having power invested in you means, especially as a Prime Minister, means you have to serve the people even more. So you have to become selfless. And I think that would be a good reminder for me every time I'm in the office to look at it and just remind myself that I'm not here for myself, but for the people. And if I'm not here for the people, then I shouldn't be in office.
Sounds like a good picture to hang on the wall. And what's the first drink you'd pour yourself as Prime Minister? What are you into?
To be honest, I don't drink alcohol.
I guess you can't really. Can you?
Yeah. Well, you can.
Training anyway.
You can. A lot of athletes do. You'll be surprised. But I would probably pour myself a fresh mint tea. I love it.
That is the least obvious drink I thought you'd pick as a boxer. And who's the first person you call?
I would call my brother.
Mm-hmm.
My brother is a year younger than me, and we've grown up together, did everything together, and we understand each other to a huge extent, as you can imagine. And I think he's a great advisor and a believer in anything is possible. I didn't believe I could go to university and graduate with a degree, and he gave me that motivation. He said, of course you can. It's easy. Like, I did this, and this is the way to do it. And he kind of gave me that belief. So my brother's been a major key in my life.
Which leads on to my next question, really, which is about your path to power and a bit about your background. Because you grew up on the Aylesbury estate in southeast London, which is quite notorious, isn't it, as an estate? It's got a lot of issues around social deprivation, a lot of issues around crime. What was your childhood like? How do you look back on your childhood now? Was it a happy childhood? Was it a difficult childhood?
So in the beginning, in the early stages, it was, quite happy. All I used to do, me and my brother used to come out and play football every single day. We used to go to school. Growing up, being around the ages of 12, 11, 13, you know, we didn't really know too much about the environment that we were growing up in, and obviously the social deprivation, etc. It's only till I got to a certain age and I started to notice certain things. I thought that type of normality was the same across the board.
Yeah.
Until I obviously changed my environment, went to school and started asking people and speaking, having conversations and telling them what was normal for me. What was normal for me is somebody being thrown off the blocks of the estate, you know, and we're talking about 2 floors. You know, did anybody witness this crime? A rape occurred at this place. Did anybody witness this crime? Call this number. That was normal for me. Like a shooting happened around here. Did anybody witness this? And seeing like drug addicts, you know, it was crime ridden. That estate I grew up in, Ellsbury Estate. Fortunately, they have started knocking down the building and they've knocked down my estate where I grew up. So there's like no evidence of it ever existing now because they've actually rebuilt new housing there and they moved everybody out. So it's just a memory.
And it would have been easy for you to go down a particular path, wouldn't it? I know you said that you grew up wanting to be a footballer, but some of the other options you've talked about were to become a drug dealer or to end up in prison or even to end up dead from violent crime. How did you manage to sort of turn that around?
One day I sat down and I analysed, you know, my life, analysed where I want to be in life, analysed what I was doing and what I was involved in. And I realised that if I was going to continue on this pathway, it's going to lead me to a certain destination and vice versa. And I realised that I didn't want to live that life. I don't want to end up in prison. I didn't want to end up dead. I didn't want to end up being killed on the streets. I believe there's way more to life. I was fortunate to have gone abroad. And I think that's one of the best ways to learn about life and different cultures and new possibilities. My mum took me to Asia, and I saw a completely different way of living. And I realized that this is a massive world. There's much more to do, and there's much more to see. And this system, you know, of the street life, you know, they almost made you believe that this is the only way. There's no other way to be successful unless you go around this route and doing this so and so. And I realized, you know what, I don't want to do that no more. I'm going to follow a different path. And like I said before, my brother was a major influence in my life and my father. And I wanted to make my parents proud. I didn't want to cause them any issues, any stress. I believe, I can definitely do it. So that's when the change began. And I started off by visiting a local boxing gym, which was introduced to me by a close friend of mine. And I was always competitive. And my brother will tell you that. And I just wanted to do something a bit competitive, something that demanded a bit of respect. And I always was interested in boxing. I just didn't know if I was able to do it or not. And once I got into the ring, I was getting battered because I didn't know the fundamentals. I started pretty late. I entered the boxing ring at the age of 18. And most boxers start from 7, 5, from schoolboys. And after I had a few fights, I realized I had a talent, I had a lot of power. And I didn't have enough time to hang around with bad influences no more. I had competitions coming up every week, every 2 weeks I was fighting. And in between then, I needed to rest and study the sport further so I can make up for all them years that I missed out on. It got to a point that I started to compete and I was going for championships, and a person in the gym, he's passed now, RIP, Colin, he said to me, "Richard, don't put your eggs all in one basket." And I took it offensively because I thought like maybe he didn't believe in my ability to be successful in boxing, but it's only now that I understand what he meant. And I
just have a plan B kind of thing, just because it's sensible to, like lots of athletes do, don't they? Sports people do.
Absolutely, and anything can happen. So I ended up enrolling in Westminster Kingsway College. I ended up doing the access course to get into uni. I studied social sciences and humanities, government and politics, sociology, psychology. Ended up doing well. Got into Kingston University, and I graduated there in 2015 with a degree in marketing, communications and advertising. And after, I decided to follow my passion, which was boxing.
And maybe it's a sign of kind of how normalised those crimes and that violence was when you were growing up, that you haven't even mentioned the fact that you got stabbed in the chest when you were 15, which obviously was a huge catalyst in your life as well, in terms of looking at the path that was ahead of you and deciding which way you were going to go. Just tell us what happened to you.
So I went out to, around that time, it was I would describe it as the party era. I used to go to different parties. We used to party up every weekend. We went to a club one day in the Old Kent Road, and we was in a party for a period of time. The party wasn't good. We decided to go to another one. So we were just on the phones and trying to find out where what the next motive was going to be. A guy stormed out of the party and started asking people for their phones, and we was very confused. We didn't know what was going on. He asked one person, "Well, give me your phone." He looked at him with that confused face, and he just stabbed him straight away. And it sounds unbelievable, but this is exactly what happened. And he went to another guy, one of my other friends. He asked for their phone. He stabbed him as well. Went to another guy. He gave him his phone straight away. Came to me. I didn't have a phone, but because of the ego and pride that I learned from that type of that street culture, I said no. Stabbed me straight in my chest, and I had the worst stab wound of all of my friends at the time. Ended up collapsing, waking up with my friends slapping me, saying, "Wake up, Richard," and ended up having to undergo some serious surgery to remove internal bleeding from around my lungs, which limited my ability to breathe and to speak properly. I had very short breaths. And it was just, I'm very lucky to be able to talk to you today.
And when you went to hospital, I mean, was it pretty touch and go at that stage? Because you were being stabbed in the chest, and it must have been pretty close to your heart.
Yeah, very close.
Yeah.
And I had aunt come in because my mum was away. She's a trader. And my aunt came into the hospital. She she was teary-eyed, and she had to sign for me to undergo operation, like emergency operation, because I was under the age, under the age of 18, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's the age. And I woke up with my dad on the left of me, sitting on the chair, and all the oxygen mask and so on, but I survived.
So after an experience like that, I mean, where did you start to sort of rebuild? Was that the moment that you kind of thought, right, I need to change my life around? Or
Yeah, that was one of the reasons. I think it was a variable of reasons, and that was definitely one of them. It was more of an experience for me. I didn't understand the seriousness of what just happened to me, but it just made me believe. It made me understand that life is not promised. There's no security in me living this type of lifestyle, being around these people and thinking everything's going to be fine. That because I'm a good person, that nothing can possibly happen to me. Yeah, I always had a good heart growing up. I wasn't a bad person. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people will tell you, if you do research my background, even when I was in secondary school, I was quite shy, timid. But one of the reasons why I ended up in that on that path was because I was just a follower. Yeah. I didn't have a backbone. Do
you think a lot of people on that path are in the same position though? Because obviously there's a perception, and anyone who hasn't been involved in sort of gang crime or been involved in that culture assumes that everyone carrying a knife, is a criminal effectively. And actually, do you think that a lot of people were just like you, that they were kind of following the path because there was no other way to go?
Yeah, of course. I believe that a lot of them just are on one path, and they probably believe that there's no way out. There's certain other dynamics that that could probably be the reason why a lot of these kids are carrying knives. For instance, if they are in trouble with a rival gang,
yeah,
and they are carrying a knife to protect themselves, mm-hmm. Would you deem that as criminal? I don't know. It's just like some of these kids, the way they're living now, it's like something needs to be done. And what I've realized is that everybody has their different reasons. Everybody likes to take away the cause and leave the effect. There's reasons why a lot of these kids are in their situations and do the things they do, but nobody wants to look into that.
Yeah.
Growing up with me, I was kind of fortunate. Even though I ended up getting stabbed once upon a time, I still had my parents. I still had my dad. that used to talk to me and try his best to convince me to take up education, to follow this path, to do this very, it became draining after a while. But it's only now that I thank my dad for just keep on trying with me and giving me that advice, because he could have just given up on me. Also with my mum, being the strong woman that she is, and having that mentality to never give up, that also rubbed off on me. And you can also see when I box, it's just in my style now. It's embedded in me. But there's some of these people, that the less fortunate people that end up carrying knives and being involved in that gang culture, that didn't have no parents. They came from completely broken homes. Their parents strung on drugs. Maybe being around a certain environment that's probably could have been even worse than mine. And that's very possible. There's so much social indicators, and it's just all about kind of looking in. And when you do look in, you'll find all the answers. And I think we need to go back into trying to understand, and not just casting judgment straight away.
And you've still got the scar from where you were stabbed, and obviously when you're boxing, often you can see the scar.
You can see a scar.
Do you feel like you're kind of taking that backstory into the ring with you? Almost like it's kind of like, it's there, it's visible, everyone knows kind of where you've come from, what you've been through. Do you think that is sort of a big part of your boxing? You said it's kind of like part of your style, and where you've come from kind of bleeds through.
Yeah.
Do you think it influences your boxing style?
Yeah, of course, to an extent. Not to say that I'm untouchable, that I can never be beaten, even though I do believe that I'm the best and I'm unbeatable. But it just shows I'm just trying to use myself as a message, as a reference to people that come from certain backgrounds, and not just that type of gang violence, but anybody that wants to achieve anything in life. Sometimes you just need to just take action and never accept what is, and just try your best to push through certain barriers, no matter what you're going through. Everybody has different issues, different situations that they're going through, and it's all about just believing and having that hope. And I'm sure with me, with the things that I've been through in my life, you can use me as a reference. It's quite easy.
So, as Prime Minister, what do you think the law is that you would pass to kind of help other people maybe in this situation, or to tackle some of the things that you really care about?
There's a few things that I care about. If we're going to talk about knife crime, I believe that there's different things that we can do, different campaigns in key areas. And I think what will be really effective is working with certain influencers, because now the younger generation are all over social media, and they're influenced by tons of people in music and in sports. So getting a collaboration going with certain key figures in key areas, I think that would be very effective. Having people like myself go into institutions and into certain areas to talk and just to tell the story, something similar to what I do now, but just doing it across the board. And
because you go into schools at the moment, don't you, and talk to younger people about knife crime?
Yeah, of course. I talk to them about knife crime. I talk to them about my life and how I achieved my goals, and I try to use it as a reference and try to find a connection between studying and going for high grades, and not just getting into sports, but just getting into any field and keeping yourself occupied, because a lot of the reasons why I kind of fell down the wrong path was because of boredom. I didn't have anything else to do. So just using myself as an example.
What do you make of the government's approach at the moment towards knife crime? Because obviously their focus is on cracking down on criminals and increasing stop and search powers, increasing sentences, increasing number of police officers. Do you think that's the right way to go?
Yes and no. There's, like, for instance, stop and search. Like, it could have two effects. It could cause more division, because a lot of people are complaining about it being like racial profiling. So they could feel like they just don't want us. They don't want to be. They think that all of us are one way, and it's that kind of stereotype where people feel really offended by, where some people are involved and some people aren't. But the people that aren't, and they're being treated in such a way, they're obviously going to probably despise the authorities. So I think that probably won't be a good idea. I think what will be a better idea is trying to find the root of the problem, come to the communities, try to promote cohesion, and talk to the leaders, the influencers, because the influencers have a great amount of power, and see if you can get it all in a room one day and just talk about different ideas on how to tackle this issue. Because, you know, it's all about just coming together and everybody using, you know, putting all the brains together and just come over. I don't think it's rocket science. You know, there's many things that we can do. The higher sentencing, that could probably be a help. But then,
Do you think that would work as a kind of a deterrent? Would it have put people off in your situation from committing crimes, do you think?
to be honest, if I heard that if you know, stab somebody, maybe back then, and let's say you would be sentenced to minimum 25 years, obviously 30 years is life. I don't think there'll be a lot of stabbings because people will be thinking about their futures.
Okay.
You know, but can they do that? Is that right? You know, they're gonna have to change everything. I can imagine how difficult that could be to change all, you know, the legislation that's been passed, because it has to, you know, make sense to an extent. You know? But yeah, maybe that would be a good idea.
There has been quite a lot of criticism of Boris Johnson, the new Prime Minister, from various people who've kind of grown up in London, and some of them in similar situations to you, like, you know, Dave the rapper, for example, at the Brits the other week was talking about Boris Johnson being a racist, effectively. I mean, do you feel strongly about Boris Johnson? Do you think he's racist?
I don't. To be honest, I haven't looked too into, you know, things that he's said before, things that he's done. But it's hard to just, you know, label somebody a racist. You know, you have to have a lot of evidence to back that up, and I just haven't done my research.
Okay.
So I wouldn't make it that assumption. But
maybe on like a broader level, you know, Stormzy as well has said that he thinks that Britain is still racist.
It's racist.
I suppose, I mean, maybe some people just feel more strongly about it than others. I'm just wondering how you feel about it. Do you feel as though Britain is a sort of a racist place still? Did you experience racism growing up?
Yeah, I experienced racism growing up, but I think it's so hard to just judge a whole nation just based on your experiences. I haven't met everybody in Great Britain, and I don't think I ever will. They might know me, but, you know, it's hard to just judge a whole nation just over meeting 100 people and having certain experiences with 100 or 200 people. I've been up north around, you know, Wigan, and they say that up north is there's a lot of racism up north. And I've been in these cities, and the way they've treated me like one of their own, to the point where I was so shocked. So it's all about going out there and, you know, and making a judgment yourself by going to the city. I'm sure, you know, people like these influencers haven't been to those cities, so they've made a judgment without even visiting the place. I don't think that's right. That's not right. Yeah. But each to their own. Everybody has their different perception. I can't tell you that you're wrong because you have certain experiences. But I just think it's wrong to just judge a whole race, whole people because of a few experiences, so to speak.
Yeah, and everyone does have their own experience. And actually, it's interesting in politics that different experiences lead you down different roads. Do you have a kind of a political party that you feel represents you?
I believe that I don't tend to just focus on one political party, but it all depends on what is happening around that period of time, and the manifestos that are put forward are realistic, achievable in wherever is the near future, and compare it with everybody else. I try not to focus on the parties themselves, but I do tend to study the politicians themselves.
Okay.
Study the body language as I do with the boxing, and you can just tell if they're really compassionate and they have that sympathy and they actually really want to help the people.
So you're kind of like a floating voter. You go like here, there,
Yeah,
depending on who sort of wins your vote,
Yeah.
who convinces you in each election.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay. Well, let's just finish off with some quick questions about coming back to you being Prime Minister. Who's the world leader that you'd love to meet? Do you think?
I'd love to have met Barack Obama.
Okay. I mean, he's still around. You could.
Yeah.
I'm sure you could like
Have a conversation.
Yeah.
I would want to have a conversation with Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm. What do you think you'd say to him?
I don't know. I would want to just understand him as a human being.
Yeah.
Because everybody has a face for the people, and everybody's so there's a lot of people that have a different personality and different understanding about things behind closed doors, but it's just what they put across. And there's some people that are just like that both ways. So I would just want to just kind of ask some questions and spend some time with him just to understand how he thinks and who he really is.
Yeah, I reckon you might find he's the same in private as he is in public.
Probably.
Where would you want to go on holiday as Prime Minister? Because it's often a thing in the papers. They get snapped on a beach somewhere, or like, what would be your kind of go-to destination when you're on holiday?
Okay, I'll definitely have to go to maybe somewhere in the Caribbean, somewhere hot.
Yeah,
and maybe the Maldives.
Okay,
I think that's a lovely destination.
Yeah. All right. Good answer. What would your Downing Street pet be?
Teacup Chihuahua.
Have you got one?
No, I don't have one. But yeah, probably.
Yeah. Just one, because you
just one.
The fact it's like portable, you could take it anywhere.
Yeah, literally, it's just portable. You can take it everywhere, put it in your pocket.
And do you think you'd ever consider going into politics after boxing? Is it something you'd like to do?
That's a possibility. There's world champions that have come and that have came and gone that are in politics now. For instance, there's Vitaly Klitschko, who was the world champion for quite a while, and he became, I think, the mayor of Kiev.
Yeah.
His brother Vladimir Klitschko fought Joshua in Wembley for the world titles. He's I think he's on the verge of going into politics, and he's doing a whole bunch of things at the moment. I've always been inspired by them because they were quite educated, and they weren't just boxers. When I came into the sport, I didn't want to just be a boxer. I did want to achieve being a world champion, and I still do. And obviously British title, which I've done so far, but I wanted to be much more than that.
Well, I mean, we watch with interest to see what you do next. And Richard Riakporhe, thanks so much for coming on Acting Prime Minister.
Thank you very much.